I'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening to all. We have the agenda before us. Are there any additions, corrections, deletions to the agenda? Anyone? Hearing none, we will start with the sheriff's report. Sergeant Koenig, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Before you should have the December 2018 monthly report. Our calls for service have increased. This is the third year in a row we saw an increase, up 36% with 1588. We had 80 crashes. That was a decrease of about 13%. 15 crashes with injury, slight increase. Our alarms were down with 103. Traffic stops, I think, increased significantly, a 40% increase with 209. Citations were up with 120. Arrests were way up with 82 for the month. We conducted 237 vacation checks. We're starting to keep track of our warrant attempts, both in the township and in the county. So we wanted to add that. That's part of our activity. So we wanted to definitely make note of that. We had 28 warrant attempts with 6 arrests. Detective Ross had 18 assigned cases, and the 4 listed closed cases are there before you. And like I said, just the 2017-2018 graph, and then our yearly. And like I said, since about 2016, we've seen that step up every month. So maybe we'll see how the calls go in the next year and see how that goes. So.
Thank you for your efforts over the weekend with the weather. I know roads that you guys were really responsive between dealing with crashes and helping us address some of the non-compliant residents.
We heard there were a couple here and there, so I think every year we run into that. I don't think it was as bad. I was off luckily, so I didn't have the fun of dealing with all that, but I did hear, talking to the guys from the weekend, they said it wasn't too bad, but we definitely had those pockets where people either just disregarded the ban or didn't get the information, which I find hard to believe, but we took care of it.
Thank you guys.
So, yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Right.
Yeah, I would echo Trustee Hawes. I know we have a problem on our street, and it seems to have kind of taken care of itself just miraculously. I saw a flashing light and a flatbed, hoisting it up on the flatbed. So
That'll do it.
I think it took the snow ban to realize that vehicle wasn't running in the first place. But anyhow, again, thank you for that. They were all over our neighborhood checking things out, so I appreciate those efforts. Anything else? Well, there's nobody in the audience that would have any questions for the sheriff, so let's go to unfinished business.
Thank you. I'm going to turn unfinished business over to our zoning director.
We have 4 zoning amendments before you tonight. The first item is a resolution to add text amendment number 569-18 to the Plain Township zoning resolution. And that is the amendment for commercial dumpsters and roll-off containers.
Why don't we do this just kind of as a point of order? Why don't you bring back, since you tabled it, your motion from last time, and then we can just kind of put these 4 under that. And we have 4 separate things for you to adopt, deny, modify.
So I'll make a motion that we bring back for consideration of the resolutions 569-18 through 572-18 that were tabled.
Good.
Second.
Been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes, now we will move on to the consideration of zoning resolution 569-18. And I would move for the adoption.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Second item on the agenda is a resolution to add text amendment number 570-18 to the Plain Township zoning resolution. That is a donation collection bin text.
I will so move on zoning resolution number 570-18, donation of collection bins
To adopt.
to adopt.
And I'll second. It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
And item number 3 is a resolution to add text amendment number 571-18 to the Plain Township zoning resolution. That's the text amendment for dumpsters and roll-off containers, the definition of.
I will so move on unfinished business number 3, zoning resolution 571-18 for the adoption.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
And the final item for unfinished business would be a resolution to add text amendment number 572-18 to the Plain Township zoning resolution. That is the definition of donation collection bin.
And I will move on zoning resolution 572-18 for the adoption of that resolution.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Thank you. That takes us to the fiscal officer's report. Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize the payment of pending warrants in the amount of $54,565.39.
So moved.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
So moved.
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize the payment for the following medical claims.
I'll move on fiscal officer number 3.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the investment report. The total interest income for calendar year 2018 was $143,113.46.
That's, have we ever seen that?
No.
No,
I
it's
don't
first
believe-
time.
I mean, I'm not
I don't
being
believe so.
obnoxious here, but I mean, to
Yeah.
toot your horn in the efforts, I mean, I know there's some education requirements and training certifications
That's a lot.
just to be able to use some of those tools, but the fact of
That's,
the time, effort, and energy in taking that position as serious as you do has elevated the benefit of the township taxpayers. That's,
I appreciate that. I actually looked up the calendar year before I changed all that, and it was, for the year, $13,708.
Jeez.
Yeah,
That's over 10 times more.
yeah.
Yeah.
We really should do some sort of article in the newsletter to educate the public about this change and how it has helped us in the
with our
future.
newsletter, is that something you guys can?
Yeah,
Because I mean,
that's
that's,
something in there for that.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
it is
Great work.
huge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, good job,
Fiscal Officer number 5, it's a request for resolution that the following sums are hereby set aside and appropriated for the several purposes for which expenditures are to be made for and during the fiscal year as follows.
I will so move on fiscal officer number 5, the appropriation of permanent funds for 2019
I'll second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 6 is a request for resolution to authorize a true-up payment to the State of Ohio Bureau of Workers' Comp for $5,269.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 7 is a request for resolution to authorize the fiscal officer to pay vendors and utility bills on the pending warrant list for the February 12th meeting prior to the meeting, since there's three weeks between this meeting and that meeting.
Also move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 8 is a request for resolution whereas Plain Township, Stark County, Ohio has not revised the credit card policy since December 27, 2005. Be it hereby resolved by Plain Township Board of Trustees to adopt the attached credit card policy.
I will so move.
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
To clarify, this is something that, based upon the auditor and treasurer's office, has to be in place by February 2nd.
Correct, yeah, from House Bill 312. So it kind of tightens up the internal controls. This credit card abuse is one of the main focuses of the auditor's state, because it's where a lot of money is misappropriated due to misuse of credit cards. So this,
Not that we've had the issue.
right,
here,
yeah,
but
we've never had the
There's
issue.
1,308 townships and so many of the rural ones. I know we brought it up at the county.
Yeah,
Scott was here, I
yeah.
brought it up at the County Township Association meeting, and a couple of smaller townships are looking around like, that oh shit look on their face, like, So I offered up ours as a sample in case your
Okay.
office starts getting calls.
Sure.
Well, and the nice thing with our policy is that we also have the internal policy, and it's in the credit card policy, that nobody can spend over $2,000 without a resolution, so that eliminates
Right.
those issues.
Anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
That concludes the fiscal
Thanks,
officer.
Tom. That takes us to the administrator in this game.
Thank you. Item number 1 is a resolution to authorize and approve payment for two 2020 gas engine Ford Explorer Interceptors from Wacom Auto Family. It should say at a cost of, the total is $71,774 for both. Yeah, plus the 45-day tags at $1,850, not to exceed $71,811.
I will so move.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion.
What's the ETA, how far out on the bill?
We don't even have that. It's,
It's unknown.
yeah, we don't know.
Could be a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
Really?
Because of
Yeah, they got the
change-
line
change-
shut down, revamping it, so.
The
Yeah.
change in
We
platform.
don't know.
Yeah, yep.
Our,
This is in anticipation of replacing those chargers that have been.
Well,
Yeah,
and,
less than
yes, and to
desirable.
also stay, the board, years ago, even when it was coming out of the general fund, had to start purchasing to replace, and just to even stay in that replacement schedule, but, you know, if the board gets us in before, we're hoping we'll be higher up on the priority list
Sooner
than
the better.
everyone else.
I mean, that's the way we've been told by Ford. The sooner you get your order in, the better.
Yeah,
Chief, are we happy with the Explorers? We were going back and forth.
We're very happy.
What was the other latest one we had? Not the Explorer, but the other one.
didn't we have some sort of a sedan,
Was it a
a,
Taurus?
Taurus.
What'd you say?
Taurus.
Oh, you
Was
know,
it
we
Taurus?
did, we tried one, I thought we procured one
Yeah.
Taurus.
And how did that work? We still,
Mhm.
we're dead set that the Explorer's the,
I think you get your full benefits out of the Explorer. You really do. You got room for gear,
back and forth.
you got availability, like, look at this whole weekend. Them Explorers just went, and we had, I don't know of any real issues with any of them through the whole weekend. And this was one monster of a storm to give them a test.
yeah.
Right to the snow, right to. That's good.
Good. Legroom alone, from my perspective, but
Yeah.
did you notice the legroom difference?
Yeah.
Yeah,
between even-
driver's compartment, you have a lot more room, yes.
Gotta be a huge difference.
Thanks.
Anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
All right, item number 2 is a yearly item that we have, is to approve an authorized payment for professional services to Civ Pro Engineering for the 2018 NPDES MS4 annual report in the amount of $3,500 to be paid from 01 and 03A.
So moved.
Second, it's been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Unfunded mandate, correct?
Correct.
Maybe we can talk to government into making this part of the settlement, to get things back open.
Good.
Yeah.
Good luck, let me know how that goes.
Yeah. Anything else? Roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
And that's the end of the administrative report.
Thank you. We have nothing from the fire department. Chief Shalberg, welcome back, by the way. Just continue to heal slowly. Okay?
Yeah.
Don't- Just take your time. That takes us to road department, Mr. Iacino.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, item number 1 is the annual Township Highway Systems mileage certificate that we received through the county from ODOT. It gives us our mileage for the total township and what we've gained and what we've lost throughout the year. We've actually lost very little. It was 0.13 tenths of a mile.
All around the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and that's where it all was. And then, but we're actually going to gain more of that next year with all these new allotments that are going to come to
Sure.
us.
We stayed probably right around at 72 to 75,
Yeah.
which is still a lot of roads.
A lot of roads with a lot of driveways that obviously you heard about.
More driveways.
You know, 22,000, if I remember correctly, is the number at or about the driveway entrances to all our roads, and we're certainly not going to stop a truck at 22,000 driveways to keep from.
Re-angling snow.
So,
11,000
you know,
of them called us today.
what's that? Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, unfortunately,
Cost of homeownership.
that's, that would be an unrealistic expectation.
You know,
That,
Still be out
that
there.
is not going, there's no place else to put it.
no. You know what's funny about that? Since I was a kid, a little kid, I remember my dad out in the front in that apron taking the snow. It's been like that forever. Not that I'm that old, maybe I am, but,
Started very young.
but
We're here to get it off the
And
roads,
it's-
not put it
and
back
it's
on.
just sad that our residents, you know, we do spoil them, which is good, and they deserve it, but we can't take the snow off the aprons. When the plow goes, it's gotta keep moving, and you've gotta do a little bit of work yourself. And I know it's not fun, I did mine, we all did ours, and it wasn't fun, but it's done. It's just what happens.
Well, I'm gonna, I don't want to digress too far off, but definitely commend you guys, I mean, the entire team, road and parks.
Yeah, that's my item number 2, Mr. Claus. I want to thank a few people. I want to thank the board, first of all, for giving us all the tools and ability to do that job, and I think the crew did an outstanding job. I want to thank Lieutenant Carver and his guys and his dispatch, because they probably got tired of hearing me on the phone the other night. It got to be a laughable thing after a while. And, you know, I got to work side by side with Rob and his crew, which did a great job, and our IT/captain/wannabe road plow driver Eric Hayes there,
Wanna be.
spent a lot of time on the road plowing and helping Rob's crews out and helping our crews out. So I just want to thank everybody, because it really makes it go a lot better when we work together like that.
Yeah,
Put a lot of hours in.
I would like to point out that all that coordination was done with no absolute direct order from
Correct.
anybody. That was all interdepartment cooperation. And I know, I think I can speak for these two when I say that, you know, we are totally appreciative of that environment and that culture, because, I mean, without that, we're not offering the best service. So, again, you know, if you want to thank people, there's a lot of people we can thank in that whole chain of events, and I think you hit most of them, and I apologize if I missed anybody, but
Trustee Hollis was out plowing, did you say that?
Yes, he
I heard
was.
this about a few hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, his grade will come out here when it melts.
Yeah, trust me. That's exactly.
Let us know if you get any phone calls.
Trust me, they're very long to be.
I'm referring him to.
Yeah, do we have any, like, maintenance on that truck?
Anything in Laurel Ridge, Saratoga Hills, and a little bit of Wicker Creek, maybe.
All right,
We mapped.
Trust me, it's all the way back past the curve, if nothing else, so.
All right, so do you want to continue with number 2, or are you
No,
okay? You're
I'm
good,
good.
thank
We're
you.
good, thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Joe.
How tired he's still.
they all do.
Yeah, I know, yeah, they're all punchy.
And cranky.
Thanks, that takes us to zoning, Mr. Farrar.
Thank you, sir. Item number 1 is a resolution to declare item A as a nuisance of
So moved.
Second's been moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
And that's all there is for zoning.
Thank you, that takes us to parks, Mr. Steinberg.
Keeping with the pats on the back, I'd like to thank the road department. They helped us put in some utility poles that Captain Haynes secured for our IT needs over in our west lot to put some security cameras up. It was done expeditiously, efficiently, and well, and Parks didn't have all of those tools, so it was nice that the road department was able to bring their expertise over and take care of that for us quickly. So, thank you. And I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud, I'm going to choke a little bit, but forgive me. I'm going to thank Captain Haynes for all the coordination and getting some of the camera work done early and often, making sure we worked out with utility poles and AEP and all that. It's not an easy task, but I know it's perfect timing.
Yeah, you'll have to
So
watch the
I
video.
just want to say thank you, and if he walks back in, I have no idea what he's talking about. So thank you again to him as well.
Thank you.
Other than that, that'll conclude Parks.
Thank you. Nothing from the law director. Let's go to communications.
Thank you. Joe, do you mind if I do these too?
I welcome that.
Okay, so of course we have a couple thank yous to our team, and the first one just reads, please pass along my appreciation to all of those working to ensure our safety this past weekend and today. I've seen all our Plain Township crews out and about. So that was the first from Stephanie Jackson. I did receive a very nice letter from Captain Haynes, who said, thought you should know I spent nearly 36 of the previous 48 hours working alongside some of the most well-organized, prepared, equipped, and experienced personnel that I've had the privilege to work with. Crews performed like a well-oiled machine, mitigated this most recent weather event and all of its challenges like an average walk in the park. Each should be commended for their commitment to excellence, pride, and service. And that was from Captain Haynes.
Nice, very nice. Also, there was a nice letter to the editor today.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did see that.
Regarding, what would that say?
Do you want to add, do you want to read that,
Can
Scott?
you read that, Scott? Yeah, let's see if I can.
Or we can have Jessica.
Yeah.
The title was Thanks to Plain Township Road Crew. Congratulations to the Plain Township Road Crew that worked throughout a frigid, blustery night to keep our roads open. Especially comforting to the elderly who might need assistance from emergency vehicles. Ralph Worth, Plain Township.
Nice.
And I don't know how many people, were out and about in the county, but there were no roads, like Plain Township roads. Absolutely not.
Guys, work hard.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious when you get to the spot where you know the
Yes.
township starts or ends.
Mhm.
Very good. Okay. This is the portion of the meeting. If anyone in the audience wishes to address the board at this time, please feel free to do so. Seeing none, no concerns of trustees, no concerns of the fiscal officer, I'll move for the approval of the minutes of January 8th.
So moved.
Moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.
Do you have a need for an executive session? Be it hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to adjourn to executive session at 6:25 p.m. from this regular meeting of January 22nd as authorized under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G for the purpose of the consideration of 1A, appointment of a public employee or official, 1F, compensation of a public employee or official. Number 3, a conference with the law director or other retained counsel concerning pending or imminent court action. And number 4, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations and bargaining sessions with public employees.
Second.
And moved and seconded, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Lino?
Yes.
Mr. Sabo?
Yes.
Mr. Hawes?
Yes.